Dad, that's Mom. The evening air carried that particular chill that settles over a city in late autumn, when the streetlights seem warmer than they should and every breath becomes visible for just a moment before disappearing into the night. Marcus Chen had always walked these downtown streets with purpose. At 42, he moved through the world like a man who had somewhere important to be, even when he didn't. Tonight was no different. His blue suit, tailored and crisp, caught the amber glow of the street lamps as he made his way down the familiar sidewalk. His 5-year-old son Tommy's small hand tucked safely in his own. They'd just left Tommy's favorite bookstore, a place that smelled of paper and possibility, where the boy had spent 20 minutes choosing between 2 picture books about dinosaurs. In the end, Marcus had bought him both. He could afford it. He could afford most things these days, but there were things Marcus Chen couldn't buy, though he didn't know it yet. Things like the moment about to unfold before him, a moment that would crack open his carefully constructed life like an egg, revealing something raw and true beneath the polished shell. They were halfway down the block when Tommy suddenly stopped walking. "Dad," the boy said, his voice small but insistent. Marcus didn't hear him at first. He was thinking about tomorrow's meeting, about the presentation he needed to perfect, about the numbers that needed to align just so. His mind was already at the office, already solving problems that hadn't happened yet. "Dad," Tommy said again, this time pulling back on his father's hand. "Come on, buddy," Marcus said, gentle but firm. "It's getting cold. Let's get home." But Tommy's feet had become roots. The boy had stopped completely. His small body turned toward something Marcus had trained himself not to see. There, against the brick wall of a closed storefront, sat a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 30, though life had written its harsh stories across her face in ways that made her look older in some lights, younger in others. Her blonde hair, once probably beautiful, now hung in unwashed tangles around her shoulders. She wore a grey jacket several sizes too large, jeans that had seen too many streets, and boots held together more by habit than by any remaining structural integrity. Beside her was a battered stroller, the kind you might see at a garage sale, marked down to $5 and still not selling. Inside the stroller, nestled among what appeared to be her only possessions, was a worn teddy bear, its fur matted and one eye missing. The woman held a small cardboard sign. The words were simple, written in shaky marker. "Anything helps. God bless." She wasn't looking at them. She wasn't looking at anyone. Her gaze was fixed on some point in the middle distance, the way people look when they've learned that making eye contact with strangers brings more shame than spare change. Marcus had learned long ago how to walk past people like this. It was a skill he'd developed without even realizing it. Like knowing how to parallel park or tie a tie without a mirror. You simply didn't see them, or rather you saw them, acknowledged their existence in some distant, abstract way and kept walking. There were shelters, he told himself, programs, services. What could one person do? What difference would a few dollars make in the face of whatever chain of circumstances had led to this moment? These were the thoughts that flickered through Marcus Chen's mind in the half-second it took him to begin guiding his son past the woman on the sidewalk. But Tommy wasn't moving. "Dad," the boy said, and this time there was something different in his voice. Something that made Marcus actually stop, actually turn, actually look at his son's face. Tommy was staring at the woman with an intensity that seemed almost painful. His small features were contracted in concentration. His brow furrowed the way it got when he was trying to remember something, just beyond reach. "We need to go, Tommy," Marcus said, a bit more firmly now. The street wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't where he wanted his son lingering either. "But Dad," Tommy said, and then he did something that would replay in Marcus's mind for the rest of his life. The boy pulled his hand free from his father's grip, took 3 small steps toward the woman, and said in a voice clear and certain, "That's Mom." The words hung in the cold air like crystallized breath, impossible and absolute. Marcus felt his heart stop, then restart with a painful lurch. "Tommy, what are you? That's not, we need to go home to Mom, remember? She's waiting for us." But even as he said it, even as the reasonable, logical part of his brain was already dismissing this as a child's confusion. Some other part of him, a part that knew his son, truly knew him, recognized that Tommy wasn't confused. The boy's voice hadn't held the wavering uncertainty of a guess. It had held recognition. Marcus looked at the woman again, really looked this time. She had raised her head at Tommy's words. Her eyes, grey-blue like winter sky, met Marcus's, and in them he saw something flicker and die. A spark of hope extinguished before it could fully ignite. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice rough from cold or crying or both. "I'm sorry. He must think I'm sorry." She started to gather her things, to make herself smaller, to disappear the way people like her learn to disappear. "Wait," Marcus said, and surprised himself by saying it. Tommy had moved closer now, standing just a few feet from the woman, studying her face with that same intense concentration. "You like teddy bears," Tommy said to her, pointing at the worn stuffed animal in the stroller. "I like teddy bears too." The woman's face crumpled slightly, like paper beginning to fold. "Yeah," she whispered, "I do." Marcus felt his carefully ordered world beginning to tilt. This didn't make sense. Tommy had a mother. Sarah was at home right now, probably making dinner, probably checking her phone to see when they'd be back. Sarah, with her dark hair and warm laugh, and the way she sang, off-key while doing dishes. But Sarah wasn't Tommy's birth mother. Marcus and Sarah had been very clear about that, very honest. They'd adopted Tommy when he was 2 years old, after trying for years to have a child of their own. The adoption had been legal, final, blessed by every authority that mattered. Tommy knew he was adopted. They'd told him in age-appropriate ways, with picture books and simple explanations about how families are made. But Tommy had been so young when they brought him home, he shouldn't remember anything from before. The social worker had assured them he wouldn't. 2 was too young for lasting memories. Except now, standing on this cold sidewalk with the city moving past them like water around stones, Marcus wasn't sure what Tommy remembered or didn't remember. "What's your name?" Marcus heard himself ask the woman. She looked up at him, surprised that he was still there, still talking to her. People didn't usually talk to her. They gave her money sometimes, or they didn't. But they didn't talk. "Rachel," she said. "Rachel Morrison." The name meant nothing to Marcus. The adoption had been closed, handled through an agency. He'd never known the birth mother's name, never wanted to know. It had seemed easier that way, cleaner. "And your teddy bear?" Tommy asked, still focused on the stuffed animal. "What's his name?" Rachel's hand moved to the bear, touching it with a gentleness that stood in sharp contrast to the roughness of everything else about her situation. "Mr. Buttons," she said quietly. "His name is Mr. Buttons." Tommy's face transformed. Pure joy spread across his features like sunrise. "Mr. Buttons!" he exclaimed. "I remember Mr. Buttons. You used to sing to him." And then in a small, slightly off-key voice, Tommy began to sing, "Hush, little button, don't you cry. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby." Rachel Morrison made a sound that was half gasp, half sob. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she covered her mouth with one shaking hand. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, felt the certainty of his life rearrange itself into patterns he didn't recognize. "Tommy," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you know that song?" "Mom used to sing it," Tommy said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "When I was little, before. Such a small word to contain an entire universe of loss and longing. Marcus knelt down beside his son, bringing himself to Tommy's eye level. "Buddy, I need you to be very sure. Do you really remember this lady?" Tommy nodded, his small face serious. "She cried a lot," he said, "and she said she was sorry. But I knew she loved me. She always loved me." Rachel was openly weeping now, her thin shoulders shaking. "I did," she choked out. "I did love you. I loved you so much. That's why I had to." She couldn't finish. Marcus stood slowly. His mind was racing, trying to piece together a story from fragments, trying to understand how this moment had arrived in his life like an uninvited guest. "There's a coffee shop," he said, gesturing down the street, "just around the corner. It's warm. Could we talk?" Rachel looked at him with something like fear. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said. "I'm not trying to. I would never try to." "I know," Marcus said, though he didn't know, couldn't know. But something in him, some instinct deeper than logic, told him this woman wasn't a threat. She was just broken and breaking, and maybe had been breaking for a very long time. "Please," Tommy said, reaching out his small hand to Rachel. "Come with us." And so, in a moment that would later seem impossible in its improbability, Marcus Chen found himself walking down a city street with his son on one side and a homeless stranger on the other, heading toward a coffee shop with no idea what would happen next. The cafe was one of those places trying hard to feel authentic, with exposed brick and mismatched furniture and the scent of coffee beans strong enough to make your eyes water. At this hour it was mostly empty, just a few people hunched over laptops, lost in their own worlds. Marcus chose a corner table away from the windows. Rachel hesitated before sitting, clearly uncomfortable with the cleanliness, the warmth, the normalcy of it all. "What would you like?" Marcus asked. "Coffee? Tea? Are you hungry?" Rachel nodded, unable to speak. Marcus ordered soup, sandwiches, coffee, more food than 3 people could reasonably eat. When it arrived, Rachel ate slowly at first, then faster, with the single-minded focus of someone who didn't know when she might eat again. Tommy sat beside her, swinging his legs, watching her with open curiosity and something else, something that looked like contentment, as if a piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was missing had suddenly clicked into place. When Rachel had eaten enough to slow down, when the immediate desperation had faded from her eyes, Marcus finally asked the question that had been building in his chest like pressure. "What happened?" Rachel wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking its warmth. She was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. Then, slowly, like someone pulling out threads from a tangled knot, she began to speak. "I was 19 when I got pregnant," she said. "His father left before Tommy was born. I tried. God, I tried so hard. I worked 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. I had no family, no support. And She paused, swallowing hard. "I had problems, depression, anxiety, things I didn't know how to handle. Things that got worse and worse until I couldn't see straight anymore." Tommy had stopped swinging his legs. He was listening, even though Marcus doubted the boy understood most of what Rachel was saying. "I knew I couldn't give him what he needed," Rachel continued. "I knew he deserved better than what I could provide. So I went to an agency. They said they could find him a good home, a real home, with parents who could take care of him properly. They said it was the loving thing to do." Her voice cracked. "They said it was the most loving thing I could do." "And after?" Marcus asked gently. "After I fell apart," Rachel said simply. "I lost my jobs, lost my apartment, started making bad decisions one after another, until I didn't know how to make good ones anymore. It's been 3 years of just surviving, or trying to." She looked at Tommy, really looked at him, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "But I never forgot you," she said to the boy. "Not for one single day. I see your face every time I close my eyes. I wonder if you're happy, if you're healthy, if you have enough to eat and warm clothes and someone who reads you stories at bedtime." "I do," Tommy said seriously. "Dad and Mom read me stories every night, and I have lots of teddy bears, but I don't have Mr. Buttons anymore." Rachel reached into the stroller and pulled out the worn stuffed animal. She held it for a moment, pressed it to her chest, then handed it to Tommy. "He's yours," she said. "He was always yours. I just kept him safe for you." Tommy took the bear with reverent care, hugging it tightly. The missing eye and matted fur didn't matter. To him it was perfect. Marcus watched this exchange, feeling emotions he couldn't name. There was fear there, certainly. Fear of what this meant, what Rachel might want, how it might change their lives. But there was also something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like compassion, like recognition, that the woman sitting across from him had loved his son enough to give him away, and that kind of love deserved something more than judgment. "Do you want him back?" Marcus asked, and hated how his voice shook on the question. Rachel's eyes widened. "No," she said quickly. "No, I could never. I'm not." She looked around the cafe, at her stained clothes, at the life written in the dirt under her fingernails. "Look at me. I can't take care of myself, let alone a child. I gave up that right. I gave it up because I loved him too much to ruin his life." "Then what do you want?" Marcus asked, not unkindly. Rachel was silent for a long time. "I just want to know he's okay," she finally said. "I just want to know that my one good decision, the one thing I did right, actually worked out the way it was supposed to." Tommy had climbed down from his chair and was standing beside Rachel now. He reached out and took her hand, his small fingers wrapping around hers. "I'm okay," he said. "I'm really okay. Dad and Mom take good care of me. But I remember you too, and I don't want you to be sad anymore." It was such a simple statement, delivered with the absolute certainty that only a 5-year-old possesses, the belief that wanting something to be true is halfway to making it true. Marcus felt something shift inside him, like a door opening onto a room he hadn't known existed. He thought about the life he'd built, about the success and the comfort and the careful control he maintained over every aspect of his existence. And he thought about how none of it, not one bit of it, mattered as much as the small boy standing in front of him, holding hands with a woman who had sacrificed everything to give that boy a chance. "What if," Marcus said slowly, testing the words as they formed, "what if you being okay and Tommy being okay weren't mutually exclusive? What if there was a way for both of those things to be true?" Rachel looked at him with confusion and something that might have been hope, but hope so fragile it was afraid to fully form. "I don't understand," she said. "I'm not sure I do either," Marcus admitted. "But I know that my son just found a piece of his past that he didn't know was missing, and I know that you're a human being who deserves dignity and a chance to rebuild your life. And I know that I have resources, connections, the ability to help if you'll let me. Why would you do that?" Rachel whispered. Marcus looked at Tommy, at the boy who had stopped on a cold sidewalk when every instinct told Marcus to keep walking, the boy who had recognized love even in its most broken form. "Because my son just taught me something I should have already known," Marcus said. "That seeing people, really seeing them, matters more than staying comfortable. And because you gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, maybe it's time I gave something back." What happened next didn't happen quickly. Real change rarely does. But it happened. Marcus helped Rachel find a place in the transitional housing program. He connected her with mental health services, with job counseling, with the kind of support system she should have had years ago. It wasn't charity exactly, or pity. It was recognition, one human being acknowledging another's worth and acting on that acknowledgement. Sarah, when Marcus finally brought her into the situation, surprised him with her immediate compassion. She'd been prepared for some difficult conversation, but when she met Rachel and saw the gentle brokenness in her, all she felt was sadness for what this young woman had endured, and gratitude that Tommy's birth mother had loved him enough to want better for him. They agreed on boundaries. Rachel was not Tommy's mother in the day-to-day sense. That role belonged to Sarah, and everyone understood that. But Rachel became part of Tommy's extended story. Someone who could answer questions about his earliest years. Someone who could help fill in the blank spaces in his history. Tommy, for his part, seemed to take it all in stride the way children do, accepting that you can love multiple people in different ways. That family is both smaller and larger than we sometimes imagine it to be. Months passed. Rachel slowly stabilized. She got a job at a bookstore. And when Marcus heard that, he smiled at the symmetry of it. She found an apartment, nothing fancy but clean and warm and hers. She started therapy, started addressing the depression that had unraveled her life years ago. She learned slowly and painfully that asking for help wasn't weakness but survival. Sometimes she would visit, always by invitation, always with clear boundaries. She would sit with Tommy and tell him stories about when he was a baby, about the lullabies she used to sing and the way he would laugh at dust motes dancing in sunlight. Mr. Button sat on Tommy's bed now, repaired and cleaned but still bearing the marks of the years between then and now. Marcus would watch these visits and marvel at how much his life had changed from a single moment of stopping, of really looking, of listening to his son when the boy's wisdom exceeded his own. One evening, nearly a year after that first meeting on the cold sidewalk, Marcus and Rachel found themselves on his back porch while Tommy played in the yard with Sarah. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Thank you," Rachel said quietly, "for not turning away, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." "Thank Tommy," Marcus said. "He's the one who stopped. I was ready to walk right past." "But you didn't," Rachel pointed out. "When it mattered, you didn't." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Tommy chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I used to wonder," Rachel said, "what kind of people adopted my son. I used to lie awake at night, terrified I'd made a mistake, that he'd ended up somewhere terrible. I never imagined," she paused, "I never imagined this. Any of this." "Neither did I," Marcus admitted. "I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I knew what mattered and what didn't. Turns out, I was wrong about a lot of things." "Were you wrong about taking him in?" Rachel asked, and there was no challenge in her voice, just genuine curiosity. "No," Marcus said immediately. "That was the most right thing I've ever done. But I was wrong about thinking that love is a limited resource, that opening our lives to your pain would somehow diminish our joy. If anything, it's made everything more real, more meaningful." Rachel nodded slowly. "I'm not his mother," she said. "Not in the ways that count, not anymore. Sarah is his mother, but I'm glad I get to be something to him, even if it's just a footnote in his story." "You're not a footnote," Marcus said. "You're the first chapter. You're the reason the story exists at all." As the stars began to appear overhead and Tommy's laughter floated through the evening air, Marcus thought about how different his life looked now from what he'd planned, and how much better it was for that difference. He'd learned that the things we walk past matter, that the people we don't see are still there, still human, still deserving of dignity and hope. He'd learned that families are built not just through blood or law, but through the daily choice to show up, to care, to see the humanity in everyone we meet. And he'd learned that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the smallest voices, from children who haven't yet learned to look away. Thank you so much for listening to this story today. If it touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories about life, love, and the unexpected moments that change us. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment where someone opened your eyes to something you'd been missing? Share your story with our community. Until next time, may you always have the courage to stop, to look, and to really see the people around you.